Today I am going to show a variety of different techniques, including some pleats and gathers that you can also implement in your 10 by 10 manipulated squares. So today I'm working with a doubled length of thread, and that's really just so that you can see it in this demonstration. Again, I usually prefer to work with a single length, especially if I am doing some form of embroidery or applique and just work with a thicker thread. I do have several strips of fabric that have been ironed in addition to my base cloth. So first and foremost, what I want to do is really show you how to work with the ruler. So I have a clear rough ruler and a pencil, and I'm going to show you a series of knife pleats. So I'm going to start off with my ruler, and I really want to be thorough about using the ruler. For some people, it's been a long time since they have, and so it's a 2-inch wide ruler, and so you see the bold lines are a 1/2 inch, so 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 1.5, 2. I'm going to start off lining up my ruler, and this has been blocked as well, lining up my ruler with the edge right at the 1/2 inch mark. And so when I talk about squaring things, I actually taped my fabric down today. We'll see how this goes. When I talk about squaring things, you want to keep it fairly consistent with that torn edge so that your lines do not begin to go on a diagonal. So I'm holding my ruler down, making a few lines in the same place just to darken it, and not letting my ruler slide around. So my first line just to the left of it, I'm going to label that P. I know that this is going to be my first pleat. I'm going to do a series of 1/2 inch pleats. Okay, and so I have several lines already. Grab some pens. Okay, so my first pleat, I'm going to give a space so the line in the middle is blank. Technically, that's your fold. This I'm going to label M because this edge is going to touch here. And so this is a system I devised years ago. I'm going to turn it towards me and fold it really so it's right on that crease. And then go ahead and take one of your pins, insert it. If you're working with a long piece of fabric, you can definitely have multiple pins at the bottom. And then I'm going to continue. So that is my first pleat. It's actually, it has a 1/2 inch depth, but it's 1 inch in between to the next. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark them all before I pin them, but as long as they're labeled, it'll go pretty smooth. And so every time I move my ruler over, you'll see that all of my previous lines are lining up exactly on that 1/2 inch. So keeping it really consistent. They definitely do not have to be. I would recommend looking into some crazy pleats or sunburst pleats, accordion pleats. There's so many different kinds and varieties. They can be implemented different ways. They can be completely irregular. And it's really just how you apply them that makes it interesting. Okay, so I have my series of lines, and I have pleat, meet, pleat, skip one, meet, pleat, skip one, meet, pleat, skip one, meet, pleat, skip one, meet, pleat, skip one. Okay, and so now I can begin pinning my pleats in place. If you're doing a lot of pleating, I would actually recommend pulling up a chair to the ironing board and being able to kind of iron as you go. That'll take the extra step of walking away and pressing everything, coming back. Because this was previously ironed and the starch is so present in this bolt of muslin I have, these are going to hold really well just by finger pressing. Okay, so I finally have all of my pleats in place. Now I could go to the iron and I can press them, but again, there's a lot of starch here. They're really, really crisp. I'm just going to finger press by running my hands over them. To press them on the iron, you're going to get a much more defined, much crisper effect, but for the sake of this demo, I'm going to begin stitching, and so maybe I'm just going to put it right here. Something I could do is I could alter the pleats by starting to kind of gently curve this seam. I could also fold this over and hide my raw edge. And so I could stitch right on top and create a stitch line there, or alternatively, I could stitch it along the back and then fold these pleats over. It's a little bit difficult to see with the pins in it right now, but that is an option. And so for today, I'm just going to stitch them straight across. And so I'm going to keep them pinned until I remove my, until all the stitches are in place. And I'm just doing a running stitch across. This is more secure because the buttonhole or blanket stitch is perpendicular to the material, and we're really trying to lock in where every pleat is. You might struggle a little bit hand sewing these pleats in. You might also want to work with something a little bit sharper than an embroidery needle, like a leather needle. If you're going through a lot of dense material like I am now, just having a little bit of an issue getting through it. going to go ahead, tie my knot here, just on the surface of the fabric, but you see that the pleats are consistently measured and they are now locked into place. And so this can create a really dynamic effect if you're layering pleats and kind of building up the volume. If you, again, change the angle of them, they're going to kind of fan out. So it's completely up to you how you utilize this technique. Next thing I'm going to do is a gather. And so I have some more fun fabric, a little bit of rainbow seersucker, and I have a knot in the end of my thread again, and I'm going to show you just how to create this gather. I'm going to go through the middle for this. So I'm just simply weaving the material, or weaving my needle through the material, more like. I'm keeping it fairly consistent. You can definitely change the dispersion of the volume by changing your stitch length. Mine is really small. I'm doing tiny stitches. It's going to create a tighter ruffle. Bigger stitches, you're going to have more space in between. And so you also have control over the density of the gather by choosing how much to pull on your thread, and so how much to condense it, essentially. Okay, so when that's been achieved, I'm just using my fingers to kind of disperse that volume throughout. I can really scrunch it, and I think actually that looks pretty cute with this fabric especially. So you can sew it straight across, or you can curve it. And so me in particular, I kind of like this little volume I have. I like what it's doing. You can see it's really condensed here, a little bit empty. I'm going to go ahead and start stitching it to the base cloth and then disperse that fullness this way to make it more even. So I'm going to fold in the edge of my ruffle. You do not have to, but I like to see it tucked in a little bit. And I'm just going to begin doing a running stitch right on top of those gathering stitches. I'm not going to tie a knot or anything. I'm just going to stitch right on top of those previous stitches to start attaching it to this base cloth. starting to take shape. You can curve it or contour it as much as you would like. You could put it in a full circle and have this really tight little flower shape. I'm just going to do about a semicircle. Okay, and when you're finished, again, I'm going to do a little bit of a back stitch to lock in that gather. Okay, and so lastly, I'm going to start with a new length of thread. And here I have another piece of fabric. This is a linen cotton. And so you see my selvage here. I'm going to kind of emphasize that selvage, and I'm going to create a gather, or turn this into a ruffle essentially, by doing a gathering stitch right here. And then, so I'm going to go straight across, and so I'll start here at the edge. And this could be a way of kind of utilizing that selvage, emphasizing it in the piece, using it as a decorative element or an embellishment in and of itself. So, gathering all of this material. And so when I pull on it, I'm kind of getting that circular shape already, which I don't especially want. So I am going to disperse that volume again and kind of anchor it here. So I'm going to fold over that edge. And you can definitely pin this in place. Might make life a little bit easier to do so. And so if I know just about where I want it to lay, I'll go ahead and take one of my dress pins here, and that'll keep it pretty level and perpendicular. Okay, and so now I'm going to do my running stitch on top of those stitches again. That really just creates some tidiness with the stitches so that you only have one visible stitch line. Again, reinforcing those stitches is going to lock them in, make them more stable and durable as well. If you try to put your stitch line anywhere else except on top of them, you could do it, you know, right above or below, but really it's what is the effect you're going for. You could definitely do another running stitch here and create some volume and a little bit of puffiness, which could be an interesting manipulation in its own right. And again, I am utilizing my non-dominant hand just to control the material. Okay, so when that has been attached, I can go ahead, do my back stitch at the end, lock it down, and begin tying my overhand knots. Okay, so I hope these videos have been informative and helpful. I have my knife pleats, my ruffle, and my gather.